God can't help somebody that doesn't want to be saved. So at the very least, if something's going to happen, you got to be able to take that. You got to keep on walking. You have to be able to keep on moving forward despite whatever's going on. And 9 out of 10 times, you're not as alone as you think. God gives his battles to the strongest soldiers, and obviously he thought I was one of them. My name is Joshua Wadja. I go to Our Lady of Good Counsel High School in Olney, Maryland currently. I've been running track for 2-3 years of my life and plan to be running track in college. And I do a whole bunch of extracurriculars and I play the drums.
Okay, that's awesome. What other extracurriculars do you do besides music?
I'm on the board for ASA, African Student Association at our school. And then I'm on the board for NHS, National Honor Society, along with a student leader for campus ministry. Oh, also do speech and debate. Danny, I look you do too much. I look you forget.
That's okay. A lot of different things you got involved there. Let's talk a little bit about your faith journey. You know, how long, I see you have the cross behind you. So I assume faith plays an important role in your life. So what's your faith journey been like? Have you been kind of Christian your whole life? Kind of talk a little about that.
So I grew up in a Catholic family and went to St. Patrick's Middle School. So I was always surrounded by Jesus and the Bible and all that good stuff since a young age. But at some point in time, I do know for a fact that I was just running through the motions of it. I knew I had to go to church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and I knew that I was supposed to be kneeling and I was supposed to be singing, and that you should never disrespect God, but I never understood the why. And at some point in time through middle school, it went from me saying, oh, I was a Catholic to just from me saying I am a Catholic to, yeah, I'm Catholic. Of course, I said it, but I never really knew what it meant. And I was basically superficial about it. And I didn't know it because anytime people would ask me, they'd say, oh, you're Catholic, right? And I say, oh, yeah, of course I am. But they would ask me questions and I just wouldn't have an answer. But I remember my summer going to freshman year, that year in particular, I was worried about the transition that I was going to be doing into high school because I was worried that I wasn't going to have many friends. If you know me now, or if you know anything about me and my personality, you'd wondering why. But during the time, I was just thinking that it wasn't going to happen and I wasn't going to talk to anybody. And throughout my middle school years, from like 6th to 8th grade, every year I was sent to this Jesus camp. I always went to it, and I was like, oh, this is just a good vacation. It was a way for me to make new friends. But I never really listened or never really sat down and prayed to God. But I remember this 8th grade summer going into freshman year, I had my counselor and I sat with him on the last day and I started crying. I told him, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm scared. I don't know if God's really there for me. And I told him everything that was going on about my relationship with God. Because I'm not trying to sound like I want sympathy, but I didn't always have the best possible childhood. And there were definitely a bunch of times where I was sitting to myself, wondering if God was really real. Why would he let me and my mother go through what we went through? Or why he would not save us, or why he would not send somebody to help us. And there were plenty of nights where I was thinking to myself, or I asked my mom, I said, if God's so good, why are we going through so much pain? And she just said, God has a plan and we shouldn't question him. I'm gonna be honest, at the time that sounded really, really dumb. I don't know why I did, because that is all knowing, all powerful God. But I was just saying, if he really was all knowing, I wouldn't have to sit there and watch my mom cry all the time. It wasn't fun. But the summer going into my freshman year, I remember my counselor telling me to close my eyes and just empty all my thoughts. And I did. And I saw like emptiness, not just black, but just empty. It was straight nothing. And then he told me to envision the Holy Spirit. And I saw this shadowy figure in this just abyss. And it was so, even though it was shadowy, I couldn't see its face properly, but I could see basically everything else. It wasn't constantly changing, but I would never get a clear look at it. And I was just fascinated. And I told my counselor, but I said, I see something, but I don't know what it is. He told me that's the Holy Spirit. He said, you might not be able to see it too clear because you don't got too much faith, but it's always next to you. I think that was the point of time where I realized, yeah, God is definitely real. God was 100% real. And even though it took me 12 or 13 years up to this point of my life, that's when I realized God was real. And I wasn't just doing the motions of things anymore. I started praying. I was talking to God constantly. I started going to church more often than I had to before, outside of just the Sunday masses. I was preaching. Whenever my friends said they wanted to learn more about God, I would be able to help them. I was reading the Bible a lot more. I was actually caring about my religion. And then I'm here now. Yeah, that's basically it.
That's an incredible story, man. Thank you for being so open and sharing everything. I think, it's funny because you just mentioned at the very beginning about all the great things you do in high school. And then, to hear that compared to all that burdens and all the weights of the past, I think that has definitely been a way that God has kind of worked through you by keeping you, by allowing
Yeah.
you to live to see, all this great successes that you've been able to accomplish in high school. Can you tell me a little bit more about this Jesus camp? Like, where is it at? What do you guys kind of do?
Okay. So every summer in my middle school years when I was younger, even elementary, I didn't have many friends in middle school, but and I lived alone with my mom. So she would send me to my aunt in Minnesota to go live with her during the summer so I could have a change of environment and meet new people. Until my aunt got married to this great guy. That's my uncle now. And then he went to this camp called Camp Jim. And he saw that I was like a quiet, shy, like nerd kid that didn't talk to anybody. And he was like, sign him to Camp Jim. Because it was an overnight camp for like a week or two. And he was like, just see what happens. It's a way to get him out of the house and it's going to get him closer to God. And Camp Jim was located in like the middle of nowhere in Minnesota. Even though Minnesota's already like, I want to say irrelevant, but there's not much to do there. It was in like St. Cloud, Minnesota. It was like deep inside the forest. You'd have to drive like an hour, couple hours from where we were living at the moment to get to Camp Jim. If you brought in electronics, there was no service. It was all the cabins were wooden. I mean, of course there was AC and stuff, but it was basically camping, but just being able to do extra stuff.
I think that's an interesting experience because even though you're out in the middle of nowhere, I think sometimes it's great when we just get to completely be out in the middle of nowhere and just completely disconnect from day to day life. Did you find that that was the case for you? I assume so.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. 100%.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that that camp has a important meaning to you, and that's the place where you could say you rediscovered Christ. God met you all the way out in a camp in the middle of Minnesota. That's what God does. That's awesome. All right, so kind of moving along here, if you had to pick one of your favorite verses or Bible passages, what's your favorite verse or passage?
So I think by far the one that I feel like describes me or sticks with me the most is Matthew chapter 24, verse 13. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. Because, like I was saying earlier, didn't have the best childhood and I wasn't the most social kid. I didn't always have the nicest things. And I know I can be a lot better right now in my life. And there's always another step. But God definitely put me in a winning position going into from my senior year, going into college, going into life. I got so many life lessons, so many like virtues, wisdom. Because I know it sounds corny to say, but I'm 17 right now, but I think I know more than some 20-year-olds that haven't been through the stuff that I have. And God gives his battles to the strongest soldiers, and obviously he thought I was one of them. He's helped me. He's helped me get to where I am.
What's your biggest advice to someone who has to like go through and persevere something difficult? Because I'm sure you can obviously speak to that, and that's what the verse kind of speaks to. The one who endures to the end will be saved. What advice you give to someone who's trying to persevere through something, but they just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel?
As much as it sucks and you giving up feels so easy to do in the situation, it's never worth it because you can sit there and wallow in whatever despair you're in. Because trust me, I'm not just talking because I know because I was there. God can't help somebody that doesn't want to be saved. So at the very least, you if something's gonna happen, or at the very least, you got to be able to take that. You got to keep on walking. You have to be able to keep on moving forward despite whatever's going on. And 9 out of 10 times, you're not as alone as you think. Because when I was going through something, I regrettably kept almost everything to myself until eventually it all blew up out of proportion. Because as easy as this is to think nobody will understand me, I don't need anybody's help. I'm this great person. Nobody, I'm just so different than everyone else. Odds are the people who you go close to will probably understand what you're going through. And if they don't understand, at the very least, they're going to be willing to sit there and talk to you. And sometimes having somebody to sit there and talk to can just, it wouldn't perchance get you out of that hole, but it'll definitely help lead you to the light at the end of the tunnel, at the very least. And then there's a whole bunch of just talking, but I think the overall thing, what I'm trying to say, is just you can't give up. As much as it sucks, you can't give up. You got to just keep moving.
And that's easier said than done for sure, because we all have our days, we all have our moments when we just want to give up. And then sometimes giving up actually looks kind of appealing, because it's like, well, we don't have to deal with it anymore. We can just, let it go and not have to worry about it anymore. But I think, and you obviously are speaking from a whole lot of experience about how giving up, or sorry, how not giving up, how being persistent, how enduring has really like led to many benefits in your life. As hard as it must have been for you and your family to kind of go through all the challenges you did, but knowing that you can endure and you can, and God is with you the whole time, even when you may not have wanted to acknowledge that God is with you, He was. So I think that's a encouraging lesson for sure. Well, what did you find helpful as you were going? What specific things or things did you find helpful when times got hard? Was it anything? It doesn't have to necessarily be religious. Is there anything that you found helpful to kind of get through those difficult times?
So you gotta also you gotta be able to love yourself. Because 9 out of 10 times, the problem that it is I don't want to say it's self-inflicted, but it might be self-inflicted. My problem at the time was actually there was a whole bunch, but I think the biggest one was I was thinking I wasn't good enough at anything. And you got to be able to love yourself. To be able to love something, you have to get to know it. So I got in tune with my body. I learned that I really liked running. So I started track during this time. And then I never really was much into music beforehand. But during this time, I found my favorite artist. Most people would not agree with this artist, but I personally really like Rod Wave, because his music speaks to me. And then even before, when I wasn't as religious, when I was going through it, I would just sit there. I learned there's more ways to talk to God than just the simple folding your hands, counting and saying, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Sometimes you can just sit there laying on your bed and just have a talk with them. Tell them everything that's going on in your life. Because if you don't, at the very least, if you don't feel comfortable talking to anybody inside your life, God will always be there to talk to. And you can just sit there and say everything. And if you don't believe in God, just simply having the idea that somebody's there listening to you is a good feeling. It helps you get some of the weight that's off your chest.
It always feels good to know that somebody is listening, somebody cares for you. And it's obviously hard when you feel alone and isolated, but knowing that God is always there, it is an encouragement. And I kind of want to wrap things up by kind of going back to something you touched on earlier about being lost, feeling like you're not good enough. Because I know for a fact that you're not the only one to have experienced that, and there probably are others watching that may be in a similar position. So based on your experiences, what might you say to someone who feels like they're lost? they're worthless, they're not good enough.
As no matter how long it takes for you to believe it, you gotta fake it till you make it. I remember when I first broke down to somebody who I trusted and I told them everything that was going on. I said the words that I suck and that I'm hopeless and I was a failure. And he made me repeat myself, I'm not a failure. And I was like, why do I have to say it? He's like, just say it. And I'm like, there's no reason to. But for some weird reason, I threw three simple words, I'm not a failure, or I'm not a four simple words, I just wouldn't say it. And I sat there for like 10 minutes and then I was like, there's no reason to say it. And when I did say it finally, it made me feel better. I didn't believe in daily affirmations or the fake it till you make it, but they're real. As much as it sucks and you're going through pain, you got to remember that you're that guy or you're that girl or you're that whatever you are, and that you are worth living and that you're worth to be loved and that you shouldn't deserve any more pain than anybody else. And sometimes just a simple reminder every single day telling yourself everything will be okay. I deserve what they all have too is all you need.
That was very well said there. Well, Joshua, I appreciate you so much for taking time to talk with us, sharing your stories of how you found Christ and how you persevered. I know it's going to encourage a lot of people. So I definitely would love to have you back on and talk some more. But thank you so much, my man. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Danny, I got you.